Let me tell you something that almost every financial advisor in America gets completely wrong. You've probably heard it your whole life, that you need $2 million to retire comfortably. Some say $3 million. The most conservative will insist you need $5 million. And because they repeat this message endlessly, people start believing that financial freedom is something distant, almost impossible, reserved only for the lucky few. But they're wrong. Not a little wrong. They're catastrophically wrong. And they're wrong because they're optimizing for the wrong question. They're calculating how much money you need to keep living your exact current lifestyle in your current location with your current spending habits forever. But that's not the question that matters. The real question is very different. It's this: how much money do you need to never have to work for someone else again? How much do you need to wake up every morning and decide how to spend your time based on what matters to you, not what pays your bills? How much do you need for employment to become optional instead of mandatory? And the answer, the real answer, is $300,000. Not $3 million, not $2 million, $300,000. Now, before you roll your eyes and say this sounds naive or unrealistic, let me walk you through the simple arithmetic that the retirement industry hopes you never discover. Because if you understood these numbers, you'd realize something shocking. You could be free in 5 to 10 years, not 30 or 40. And if you reached that point, they'd lose decades of management fees and commissions. Their entire business model depends on keeping you in the system for as long as possible. So let's break this down, starting with what retirement actually means. Traditional retirement planning is based on one assumption: that retirement means maintaining your current lifestyle indefinitely. If you spend $70,000 per year right now, they assume you want to keep spending $70,000 per year forever. Sounds logical, right? Until you realize how many hidden assumptions are buried inside that number. Here's the first flawed assumption: that you'll continue spending the same amount once you stop working. But most of your current spending is what I call compensation spending. Money you spend because you're stressed, exhausted, busy, or stuck in a lifestyle shaped around your job. You buy expensive meals because you don't have time to cook. You buy work clothes. You take expensive vacations because you only get 2 weeks off per year. You spend on entertainment to decompress from stress. You justify a nicer car for a miserable commute. Remove the job, and a massive portion of that spending disappears. The cost of a good life with no job is often 30% to 50% lower than the cost of a life built around employment. The second flawed assumption is this: that you'll keep living in the same place after you retire. But why would you? If your job is what ties you to an expensive city like San Francisco, New York, Seattle, or Los Angeles, why stay? When you remove that anchor, the entire world becomes an option, and the difference in cost of living is enormous. You can live just as well or often better in places that cost 50% to 80% less. The third flawed assumption is that you need to replace your income. You don't. You need to cover your expenses. That's a completely different number. So let's talk about the math, the part nobody explains because it destroys the "you need millions" narrative. If you invest $300,000 conservatively into dividend-paying stocks or a diversified set of global index funds targeting a 4% yield, you generate $12,000 per year in passive income. That's $1,000 per month without touching the principal. Now, in the United States, $1,000 a month is poverty. But in Portugal, it's a comfortable life. In Thailand, upper middle class. In Colombia, Vietnam, Albania, Mexico, Ecuador, Malaysia, and dozens more, $1,000 a month. Covers rent, food, healthcare, transportation, entertainment, and still leaves a small buffer. Not survival, comfort, security, freedom. Thousands of people live this way right now. It's called geographic arbitrage, using global differences in cost of living to dramatically lower the amount of money required for financial independence. But of course, the moment you explain this, the objections start rolling in. So let's address the biggest ones. First, healthcare. Yes, American healthcare is absurdly expensive, but the rest of the world is not America. Countries like Portugal, Spain, Thailand, Malaysia, and Mexico offer excellent healthcare at a fraction of the cost. Private insurance ranges from $100 to $300 per month. Public systems are often cheaper. Routine care in many countries is just as good, sometimes better, than the U.S., at 10% to 20% of the cost. Second objection, inflation. But remember, your money remains invested in the market, which historically outpaces inflation over time. And many people supplement their passive income with small amounts of flexible work, freelancing, consulting, teaching English, running an online business. When your baseline needs are only $12,000 a year, an extra $3,000 or $4,000 goes a long way. Third objection, family and friends. For some people, this is a deal breaker, and that's okay. But many people overestimate how tied they really are. Adult kids don't need you living next door. Parents age, but that's a temporary stage of life. And new friendships form wherever you live. In fact, many expat communities develop incredibly strong social networks because everyone there made a similar life choice. Fourth objection, what if something goes wrong? Well, you still have the $300,000. You're not spending the principal, you're living off the yield. If an emergency happens, you can pull from the principal. And remember, this isn't a cage. If you try a decade of freedom and decide you want to work again, you can. Optionality goes both ways. The real point is this: the entire system has convinced you that freedom requires millions of dollars. It doesn't. Not if you're flexible, not if you're open-minded, not if you're willing to explore a world bigger than your zip code. For the cost of 1 month's rent in a major U.S. city, you can travel to Portugal, Thailand, or Colombia and test this for yourself. Live like a local for 4 weeks. Track your expenses and see whether the numbers work for you personally. Because here's the truth the retirement industry will never tell you. Freedom isn't nearly as expensive as they want you to believe. And if you knew what life could look like on $300,000, you might never wait for $2 million.